Hello. So this is the first topic in my part for general chemistry 2, the biomolecules. Biomolecules is a kind of organic macromolecules, or a very huge, very large molecules found in the biological system. Okay? And it can be divided into categories like this. Okay? The very simple one, the first one, is called carbohydrates. Okay? From the wording, is the carbon and hydrate or water, because the conventional carbohydrate molecules, normal carbohydrate molecules, contains carbon and hydrogen and then oxygen. The ratio of hydrogen and oxygen is 2:1, similar to the water, right? H2O. So in the very ancient time, we thought that the carbohydrate is a kind of carbon compound which was hydrated with the hot water molecule. So this is how we called the carbohydrate. Okay. Anyway, nowadays we know that a carbohydrate is a kind of compound composed of the basic unit or building blocks of carbohydrate is a sugar. Okay. But sugar itself can be divided into many categories as well. But to make it simple, right, the smallest building block is called monosaccharide. Monosaccharides. So we have so many kind of monosaccharides. Okay, for example, ribose sugar, glucose sugar, okay, or galactose sugar, things like that. Okay, that's the monosaccharide. This monosaccharide can then constructed, okay, or condensed with other monosaccharides, okay, or maybe sometimes the monosaccharide like glucose can condense with the cells, okay, the second glucose molecules producing bigger carbohydrates like disaccharides, or eventually you have more polysaccharides like starch, cellulose, things like that. Okay, so these kind of names you may heard from your high school or sometimes from your primary school as well. That's the carbohydrates. So the building blocks of the carbohydrate is monosaccharide. The nucleic acid. There are two types of nucleic acid, DNA and RNA. Nucleic acid can be called as a polynucleotide. Okay? So the building block of the polynucleotide is a nucleotide. So as you can see, carbohydrates is the monosaccharides and their derivatives, their polymers, things like that. And nucleic acid is also a polymer constructing from a building block called nucleotides. Okay? But nucleotides is kind of very big molecules as well. But I will talk about it later, how we can construct the nucleotides from something smaller than that. Okay? After you have nucleotides, then nucleotides polymerize to be polynucleotides or nucleic acid. And there are two forms of nucleic acid, DNA and RNA, that you may already heard about it, right? The RNA is ribonucleic acid, and the DNA is the deoxyribonucleic acid. So one of the things in the nucleotides is ribose sugar. Right? So starting from ribose sugar, you can then condense with other things, making nucleotides, and then the nucleotides polymerize to be polynucleotides or nucleic acid. So that is why we have to learn something about the monosaccharide first, because ribose sugar, which is the subunit of the nucleotide, is made from the carbohydrates. Then we have proteins. The building blocks of the proteins is the alpha amino acids. So from the name is the carboxylic acid with the amino group at the alpha position. So we call this as the alpha amino acids. And then again, the alpha amino acids undergo polymerization, and at the end you have proteins. But in the process of making proteins or condensation of the alpha amino acids, okay, we use polynucleotides as a catalyst or as a kind of factory, okay, to condense amino acids together, making it very long chain of proteins. Okay. Then we have these three very important biomolecules. Okay. The last two things here is kind of mingles the things up. So lipids is a biomolecules that are not on these three categories and water insoluble. So actually, lipids are biomolecules, any biomolecules that is water insoluble, and they are not in these three categories. So we call all of this thing as lipids. So there are so many kinds of lipids that can be divided into many categories. Let's start with the basic structure of the lipid is constructing from fatty acid. So after you have fatty acid can then condense with something else, making waxes, making triglycerides by condense with the glycerols. And there are many kinds of lipids, like phospholipids, sphingolipids. Okay, you've heard this name from your biology class already, maybe. And then, etc. Yeah. Other biomolecules, which is water soluble. So water soluble small molecules in your biological system normally drops here into the last categories. Okay. For example, alpha amino acid itself, okay, is the water soluble biomolecules, okay, and it's dropped here in the last section. Okay. But after the alpha amino acid condense together, making a long chain of polymer, then it is called proteins. But the building blocks here is in this groups, in the last group here. So this is the introduction of the biomolecules. So we will, starting from the very first one, carbohydrates, and then go further beyond down here. And I will just talk about the 4 types of biomolecules here. We just cut the etc., the last group out. Okay. Now let's begin with the carbohydrate.